report at 7:01 for the regular monthly meeting of the Board of Ed. Before we begin, I'd like to read the mission statement. Our mission is to inspire in each student a joy and passion for learning and a commitment to excellence, personal integrity, and social responsibility. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I apologize to Eric, I forgot to give you this song. Sorry about that. All right, let's begin with our Avon Achievers. If Mr. Kimball could come forward, we'd like to welcome Krista Allen, Trisha Blunt, Pamela Conrad, Ann Feeney, Mary Howley, and Sharon Major.
So, I'm going to keep backing up in order to address everybody. So, the reason I asked these fine people to come for Avon Achievers is really straightforward and simple. I started as a paraprofessional, and I started working with special needs kids, and I often think that that's overlooked on the contribution that paraprofessionals make not only to the community, but to the students who are in their charge and to the teachers in which they support. And this particular group works with a very challenging group of individuals, and I have to say on a daily basis they show more empathy to their students and to one another than pretty much anybody in my building, straight out, and pretty much any para that I've ever worked with. In all honesty, I mean, it's a special place. When I'm able to come in and see the way you guys interact and the way the kids interact with you, it hits home on a regular basis. Again, I started with a TBI kid, and I understand what it's like when you're working with someone difficult, and so you always go above and beyond, and I think sometimes you don't get the recognition that you deserve, and I hope that this is enough to show that. So I just want to thank you and thank your families for allowing us to share them for the time that we do during the course of the day. All right? Thank you.
Dave Conrad. Trisha Blunt. Krista Allen. Sharon Major. Ann Feeney. We still thank her. And Mary Howley.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's so important that we do recognize our parents, so I'm glad you could make it here. You do amazing work for our students, and that's what really matters. That's at the heart of it, so thank you so much. If you came here tonight to celebrate with them and you don't care to stay for the rest of the meeting, we are fine with that. You're welcome to dismiss yourselves and enjoy, hopefully, what's a clearer night for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, so now, hopefully you've had a chance to look at the minutes from the last board meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the Board of Ed regular monthly meeting minutes from April 24th, 2018?
So moved.
Houston moves. Can I have a second?
Second.
Jackie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Can I please have a motion to approve the Board of Education special meeting minutes from May 7th, 2018?
So moved.
Houston moves. Can I have a second?
Second.
Jason seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously as well. So now it is our communication from the public. Mr. Macy, I don't know if you had anything you'd like to share with us. All right. The room cleared out. joining us again. Okay, so now I think our students perhaps aren't joining us this evening.
I wasn't notified, but I think maybe because of the weather.
I would think so too. So if they were to appear, would anyone be opposed to us adding them in at another time in the meeting? Okay. So we'll keep moving forward. Where should I put this? You and Jay have that one, and then Jeff. Okay. So now to the committee and liaison reports. Our curriculum and professional practices committee. Jackie, would you like to speak to that?
Skip the financial report.
Oh, I apologize. Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I apologize, Jackie.
That's okay.
Order.
I'll start.
I'll go ahead. Here, I'll check it.
Okay, sorry. If you wouldn't mind. I apologize.
The financial report. Sorry. I would like to go into a little bit more depth from what we started last Board of Education meeting. What I began with the Finance Committee last week regarding the year-end balance and the trend that we saw this year and where that comparative data really comes to life with what Avon has historically seen for those year-end balance figures. So if you'll allow me, we're just going to step through a few pieces that maybe would help to answer some questions as to how Avon ends up here. Okay. So we'll start off with just an additional 0.47 or $265,000 was encumbered for month ending March 31st. Object code 100, which is usually where we see most of that salary savings, that saw a modest decrease of about $37,000 from the unencumbered funds from the month prior. So we're going to further examine the salary trend for the fiscal year 17-18, which I can only compare to the last time this happened was in fiscal year 14-15. So here we go, 11 unpaid leaves, averaging about $25,000 in positive variances per employee, totaling about $275,000. Those were unbudgeted, unknown leaves. Personnel turnover variances from original budget to date, $80,000 positive variance. Lower substitute needs for custodians, resulting in $63,000 positive in that line. And teachers under the long-term subline, which is a 100-level line, it's not a Kelly Educational Services line, $60,499. Unfilled positions, unpaid days, specifically for salaries, tutors, and TAs, about $90,000. That directly relates to the fact the state did not release grant funds until, this is the latest I've ever seen it, December and January, so we were not able to hire to at least 4 TAs until late in the year. That resulted in that variance. The courier has gone unfilled because we can't find someone with the proper licensure. That's $20,000. And paras, varying about $49,981. We also had lower contract negotiations come in this year. So let's put some money to where that actually shook out. The negotiated rates for the para-educator union was 2.25. We budgeted 2.25 and we actually came in about 2.0%, and that resulted in $42,000 in change in savings. And the secretaries, same thing, we budgeted 2.25 and that came in about 2.0% increase, $18,898 in savings. So the total estimated salary variance as of month ending March, April 30th is about $700,293 just in Object Code 100 for this fiscal year. I just hope that that sort of rounds out how we ended up here. Like I said, this is not typical. The last time this happened was in fiscal year 14-15 with a very similar trend. Other than that, this is positive rather than negative. And so we'll revisit that year-end encumbrance listing based on this activity and, of course, the supplemental appropriation.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions for Heather?
When are you going to be able to get us an anticipated amount that you would expect to be left over at the end of the year? Do you have the unencumbered balance, you think?
No, on page
37.
37? Okay. Yeah, I missed that.
Any other questions, Houston?
Nope.
Anyone else?
I have a question, just because I really am a neophyte at understanding your entire world of finance. So how do we get in a contract from, that's contracted for 2.25 to 2.0? I mean, is there a basic, how does that work?
So our negotiations hadn't begun when the budget was put together. So we budgeted for a contract increase of 2.25, but after we settled during negotiations, it ended up being lower.
Okay. Thank you.
Jackie, you all set?
Yeah.
Laura?
I'm happy to see that a field mower is being purchased. I think that's a great idea. Will we be sharing that field mower with the town? How will this work since?
Well, we'll probably discuss that later in the meeting.
Okay.
So for this is just,
This is how we got here, right?
yeah, this is really just an explanation of the numbers that we have on page 11 when we talked about the unencumbered balances. That'll be a richer conversation when we get to that part of the meeting, which is under new business.
Okay. And how did the basketball, or excuse me, the baseball field get put at the top of the list for refurbishing using these?
That's the same conversation that'll happen under the unencumbered balance funding.
Okay.
So we'll have that during new
We'll have that
business.
opportunity to do that?
Absolutely. So anything else regarding page 11's information? Okay, hearing none.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is just for my own education, so when I'm out in the community, I'm giving the correct answers. When we say unfilled positions, is that just, what? What does that mean?
So for example, the courier that I gave to you, there's very specific licensure that goes with that position, and we've been unable to find a candidate to fill that position. So that has gone unfilled for this year. And that was because we had an unanticipated resignation that was previously filled. As for the TAs, you know, it's a delicate balance here when it comes to our grant funds, and we really want to make sure that we are not allocating grant funds away from where they really should be, which is what's closest to kids, right? So our tutors are mostly by majority funded by grants, but because the state of Connecticut held back the grants literally until December and January, we were unsure about whether we would be able to utilize grant funds to support those positions. So to make sure that those positions remained intact, we essentially funded them using general fund dollars until those grant funds came in, if that made sense. You can't supplant, so once you move a position or an item from a grant into a general fund, it can never go back. So it's kind of a balancing act. That's why we chose not to fill the TA positions, so that our tutors would be funded and safe.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, all right, thank you, Heather, very much. Okay, so now, Jackie, curriculum and professional practices, would you mind giving us an update?
I can give you an update, but we did not have a meeting in May.
Yet.
Yeah, because I was like, oh my gosh, did I miss minutes? But they are not in here. So we are anticipating a meeting on May 29th. I think, did that work out good for you guys? Okay, so then we will, I think.
Do we also have a meeting next Monday, the 23rd? I saw two on the calendar, so I wanted to see if we were putting them together.
When is the 21st?
Or the 22nd, I'm sorry. Is it? Oh no, it is the 21st.
I thought we had,
Are we changing that one to the 29th?
my impression was we were changing the one that we scheduled for June 5th. We're
So
kind of
maybe this is
meshing
from
two
the old
meetings.
calendar then, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But I will double check with that Shirley tomorrow to make sure. But
No, I think
this
you're
is,
probably right.
we're combining two because we have some conflicts coming up.
Yes, no, I think that's probably from old days when we did it on Mondays and I never cleaned up all of it from my own calendar,
Yeah.
so I'm glad I
I don't want
asked.
to miss them.
I would have been at central office hanging out with Bridget, so I'm glad we discussed that, so yes. So your next meeting will be the 29th.
The 29th, and we're going to be going over curriculum updates, AP, EC, more conversation around that. I think we're looking to how the SAT program is administered,
Student assistance team, yeah.
assistance team, and things like that. So we're looking forward to it.
Excellent, thank you, Jackie. Okay, now finance. Jay, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So at our last meeting, most of our time was spent discussing the year-end encumbrances and the facility use expenditure, which we're going to be talking about under new business tonight. So I'm going to get into those details when we go over them later. Our next meeting is June 12th at 6 p.m.
Excellent, thank you. Negotiations, Jason, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, I think we have a little bit of positive news. We look like we have an agreement with the security and safety personnel now. It's not all signed off and ready for approval, but we seem to be there, so that's good news on that front. And we will start our negotiations with the custodians and maintainers next Thursday, May 23rd. So that's where we stand right now.
Excellent, thank you. And policy, Laura, would you like to speak to that? Yes.
Sure. So we did meet yesterday. It was a special meeting, so those minutes are not in the packet yet. The three main items that we discussed were primarily the homework policy, which has been reworked through the homework committee that's been working on that for a couple of years and was presented by Jess Giannini. And we also talked about the retention policy with information that was provided by Donna, and then we explored information that was pertaining to fracking waste in the food system of public schools. Some information was provided to us by Maggie Dreyer from Food Services. And our next meeting is in June, but I'm not exactly sure of the date because we've got things moved around. Our regular meeting's the 18th, right?
We're shifting this meeting to the 18th.
Right. And I don't remember when the policy meeting is. Maybe somebody has that on the calendar. I apologize.
Maybe the 12th right after.
Sounds right. And we'll be
Yes.
moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
We also talked about, for the second time, a number of the business policies, some of which will be moved up for our first read in June.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. Now our liaison reports. For the first one, Curriculum and Professional Development Council has not met yet, but they will be this month. And Donna, is it May 30th? 31st. So that will be coming, an update at our next meeting. The Avon Board of Finance, David is not with us this evening, but it actually was a meeting that we all attended because it was the budget presentation. Am I correct on that one? So everyone, pretty much, does anyone have any questions about what took place there? Most of us were all in attendance there.
Tomorrow's the referendum.
Is the referendum, so let's be sure to all show up ourselves. Avon Town Council, Jason, if you want to give an update on how their meeting went.
Yeah, that was on May 3rd. There was some turf field discussion again. The kind of bottom line was that it was agreed that we needed to meet together with the Town Council and the Board of Education. So that is in the works. It looks like the meeting will hopefully be held by the end of this month. There was some talk about the current field conditions. A couple of the council members had some interest in maybe getting out and doing a walkthrough of the field, so I did mention the fact that my understanding Bridget had been in contact with Brandon about maybe getting some Board of Education people together with some town people to just walk through the current fields and take a look at that, so we talked about that a little bit. They had a presentation from Dennis Dix who showed just different scenarios in terms of long-term bonding and financing, how that would look for the town in terms of the turf field project, some other large town projects, the antenna project they're working on. So I'm hoping that when we have our joint meeting, I had spoken to Heather about maybe bringing Mr. Dix back to give that presentation to us as a board as well as the town council, just because I thought it, for me being in the crowd, and I thought for all of us, it was a nice illustration of just how the financing and the bonding affects the overall financing of the town. So hopefully he'll come back to that joint meeting because I think it would be beneficial to us and anybody who shows up for that meeting. And then the last item that really touched upon us was there was discussion about the fact that the town's human resources person is retiring. So in the interim, Brandon is going to take over that function, and there was some talk about potential of sharing some services now that the Board of Education is going to hire our own human resources person. So it was just preliminary discussions. It sounded like Brandon and Bridget may have talked really briefly about that possibility, but that was basically all really would affect us that came up at that meeting.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, so Jackie, the Capital Region Education Council, I don't believe you attended. I don't know if you have any information to share.
Tomorrow they're having their annual meeting in the morning. I'm not going to be able to attend, but I can follow up and see if there's anything. I think there's kind of an ongoing discussion right now with the superintendents about magnet school funding for 18, 19, 19, 20. So I think there's a lot of people, I assume, involved in those conversations,
Okay.
as well.
Excellent. Maybe we can have a substitute or something step in when you're unable to make it. I don't know if anyone already knows that they would want to possibly participate on that.
I have asked this many times. I would love to have a sub. Because it's Wednesdays in the middle of the day. It's a very, very hard time for people to go. I would love to have some, because I cannot make it all the time. So it really would be, if we wanted to have robust kind of interaction with them, it would be nice to have somebody there on a regular basis.
Okay, so if no hands are flying in the air, maybe you give it some consideration and think about it and can work that out with Jackie.
Yes.
You'd appreciate.
This should be a recurring discussion at every meeting, because we keep,
All right.
Nobody's biting.
I know. Okay, thank you, Jackie. All right, moving on, the next piece would be the chair's report. I don't have anything except, again, just a reminder that tomorrow is the referendum, so let's make sure that we go out and vote ourselves. And I hope that there will be good turnout so that we can move next year forward in a very positive way. I feel very good about our budget, and I'm hoping that the community will receive it that way too. So I'll move it over to Dr. Carmola for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So we have two on the hiring reports. We have a long-term sub for a Latin teacher here at the high school due to a faculty member leave through the end of the year. We have a resignation of an English teacher that we will be looking to fill at the end of the school year. Our enrollment report is steady, exactly the same number as we were in April, so we've balanced out again at this point. We're still taking in some kindergarten registrations. I'm looking to see what that will look like over the summer. Still working hard on those numbers for kindergarten class sizes and so forth. Just generally speaking, a few things I wanted to point out. One, to thank Mr. Brochu here at the high school, who had invited us in the district to see his students in chorus work with world-renowned composer Paul Mailer, who composes songs often for the royal family, including for Prince William and Princess Kate's wedding, which was one of the songs that we were able to see him work with our students on. It was really phenomenal, really great opportunity for the students to have this composer in the flesh here at Avon High, working with them and directing them as they sung. So great opportunity, and I'm glad we were able to see that. Of course, I couldn't make it to all capstone presentations. I would have been here for quite a while. I did manage to see a few, and one was something that I think was shared with us through some of our meetings, including at the public hearing. There was a student who did a capstone related to school security, and I was able to make it to that. So was the chief of police, which was very nice that he took time out to come. Our SRO was with us, our security directors. We may have scared the young man a little bit, and we all turned up at the door. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he had in mind, but we were there. And generally speaking, he spoke a lot about the things that we were doing, but maybe most importantly, he talked about the idea of having connected students at school. That, as long as you have a student connected to at least one adult that would report something they were worried about, that's kind of the best security that you can have. And so that was a big part of that discussion. So I'm grateful that I was able to be there and have some of that conversation with him. I've been out there still trying to make it through all of the schools and all of the classrooms. I'm not quite there. I was at the middle school in Thompson Brook again today. I'm almost through. We had another PTO leader meeting at Roaring Brook. Shoot and I attended. And mostly just questions about our calendar and general goings on in the district, but it's very nice. We've had a lot of turnout there. Also, for the first time, I attended the Avon Canton Rotary meeting a couple of weeks ago on Friday, which was great. And as my schedule allows, I'll continue to go. They're already requesting that I join, of course, and that happens the first time you go to a Rotary meeting. If any of you are Rotary members, you know that, and I had been previously, so they did their homework on me and they knew that, so we'll see what happens there. Another thing that was just fabulous, I just want to say congratulations and thanks. We, again, the board chair and I went to the Capitol last week and we saw 2 of our students here from the high school be recognized for winning the Congressional App Challenge. And that was a really neat experience because there were only 5 high schools represented because it was divvied up by the 5 congressional districts. And so we had 2 from Avon High School because they were twins who are sophomores here at the school. And that was nice to see them be recognized. Likewise, we had a great National Honor Society induction, senior athlete recognition last week. We was at both of those. And finally, I'll thank Mr. Lynch, who took a group of students, about 12 of them, I believe, all 5th grade and 6th grade students, to the Hartford Marriott. They served as ambassadors for junior achievement. So they were recognized. It was at least 500 people in the room. It was a pretty big annual event. So it was very nice to see our students recognized, besides, honestly, how cute they were because they were 5th graders, most of whom were in business attire, suits, ties. And for whatever reason, they split students from their parents at the event. So I was at the table with almost all of the students, and Mr. Lynch was at another table with 3 of the students. So it was an interesting morning, getting to know about 10 of the students from Thompson Brook, who, when I sat down, who is this lady that that's sitting at the table? And then, of course, it took off from there. So very interesting. Been a very busy couple of weeks, and I'm not counting, but I understand some of our teachers might be, some of our students I'm sure are. I'm told as of today we have 24 days left of school. We've decided at central office we need about 64 to get things done, so we'll see what happens between now and June 19th. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending so much time in the schools. It really makes a huge impact on not only the students but the staff, just in building that morale. So we really appreciate the time that you're taking.
Thank you. You know what, I should say one more thing. I can't believe I forgot to say this. I just want to thank our PTOs who showered our teachers and our staff as a whole, actually, at all 5 schools over the past week. Breakfast, lunches, ice cream trucks, you name it, they pulled out all the stops, and there was a lot of happiness to go around here in the final stretch as a result. So thank you to our PTOs.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. All right, so now as you all entered this evening, you saw at your spot was a packet that I would like to add to the consent calendar. It's regarding a field trip for 3 of our students who have made it to the place of joining the team, the state math team. So 3 out of the 50 students are our own, and they will be traveling overnight. So as a board, we do need to pass this so that they can participate. It's completely being funded by the PTO. So I think, again, we have to thank the PTO for stepping in on this to allow our students to participate, and they really earned this through their efforts and through their studies. So I would like to add this to the consent calendar along with the approval of budget transfers. Does anyone want to remove anything from the consent calendar?
Require
Is everyone
a
okay with adding this to the consent calendar?
Did you require a motion? Or would you say absent objection that you're saying it sounds unanimous?
I guess I'll just ask it. Can I have a motion to add this to the consent calendar?
So moved.
Okay, Houston moved it. Can I have a second?
Second.
Jackie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that passes. So now no one asked to remove anything from the consent calendar. Can we go ahead and have a motion to pass the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, Houston moves. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, Jason seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the consent calendar passes. Now on to new business. This is where we can have more conversation regarding the information that's been provided to us, primarily from a financial standpoint. So the first issue would be on page 37. We are looking to approve the year-end encumbrances. Does anyone have any conversation like to have around this before making the motion? Laura, did you want to ask any questions?
Sorry that I started working on that earlier. I wanted to understand how the baseball field had been chosen over other fields to refurbish.
Okay, Heather, do you mind?
The AHS baseball field was cited at the beginning of the year as requiring attention. And the reason why this became really an issue is because they believe it's going to be unplayable next spring. So this was brought forth to the Finance Subcommittee, and we had considered utilizing use of facilities funds on an immediate nature for it. And then we decided maybe we should have a bigger conversation about fields in the town, which is why we ended up going with Championship Turf to review the Board of Education fields, and then they will be reviewing the town fields as well for best practices and to sort of create a schedule of maintenance and what would probably be best to maintain our fields moving forward. But at the very least, the AHS baseball field does require that attention still at this point, which is why it ended up on the year-end encumbrance request.
So I was there at the Finance Committee for those discussions. I still want to understand how this particular field over any other athletic facility in town was chosen to be put on this list. Who ultimately made the decision to keep this on versus some other location that's also in terrible shape?
Well, I think the issue with this particular field is from finance is the fact that it's going to be deemed unplayable. So we haven't heard that from any of the other fields and the officials. You do know that we are trying to rehab the field hockey field here, which is why it's been closed for this spring. But the baseball field needs some intense attention.
I know so does the field hockey field and some other fields as well. The middle school field hockey field is also in terrible shape. The football fields are in terrible shape. I mean, we know this, right? Again, why is this one taking priority over the others?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we already spoke a little bit about, I don't remember if it was the full board meeting or not, reseeding the field hockey field, for example. So we're already involved in that work to rehab it. Mm-hmm. So that still will be done. We didn't need to encumber any of this year-end money to do the things that we had already begun. This field, with the amount of work that it needed sooner than later, because the officials had deemed it nearly unplayable through CCC. I must always say the wrong one. Because we had the money to do that, in addition to what we've already begun, we asked to encumber the money for that field. I'm not positive, honestly, about the middle school field.
I'm not positive.
I'm speaking about the field here at the high school. I'm saying we're already reseeding and rehabbing that one. That will still go on. But the middle school field, I have not had a conversation about yet.
Do you know when we're expected to get back the report from the consultant?
Hopefully within the next couple of weeks. I would hope to present it to the Finance Subcommittee in June. That was the hope.
Okay. And the field mower, which I think is great that we're getting this piece of equipment, but I want to understand how it would be utilized and how, these buildings are ultimately owned by the town, so I find it interesting that we're paying for a field mower. Is there no town field mower that gets shared, or how does this work?
So that we have a field mower right now, and our field mower is on its last leg. The repairs to our piece of equipment have exceeded what we would like to be expending to the region of welding, things of that nature. So the town actually has their own field mowers that are enclosed and very similar large. They've received 2 new ones, I believe, and ours is still going. So we're requesting to replace that particular field mower, and we'll utilize it, as much as we can, but we just can't afford to continue to weld the deck and things of that nature.
And is this in addition to the field mower that was on the capital improvement list?
Yeah, this is the one that was on the capital improvement list that won't make it. So we're asking to purchase it. We're not getting it. We're only getting the top 2 from the capital improvement request this year.
That's news to me.
We didn't get anything other than the AHS fire alarm and security upgrades this year from capital.
Really?
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, this is all news to me, so.
You're saying on the
Generally speaking.
entire list, for the capital improvement list that was developed and presented back in the fall, the only 2 things, can you repeat which items were approved?
Yep, the AHS fire alarm and security upgrades phase 1.
Okay.
Can you, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but the approximate total of those 2 projects though, because they are large projects from a monetary standpoint.
65 and 3, so maybe 565,000, something to that effect.
Okay. So thank you for that clarification, because I remember seeing big color pictures of a field mower at that presentation and wondering, is this in addition to that one? So
No.
that's very helpful. Yeah, thank you.
One question. What's the status of the supplemental appropriation? Because it says here pending, and I'm unsure what that means.
It means that it's going to council and then finance in June. It didn't make their packet.
It didn't make their packet. Do we have any idea why?
Well, the packet was prepared on Thursday and I got it over on Thursday, so.
Ah, okay. All right, well, there you go. That's fair, and I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No,
I was just
fine.
wondering if we had a tea leaf issue as to whether or not it was going to be granted or not. And
By statute, they have to grant this one, so.
This is the open choice.
This is the open choice.
This is the only one they
Right.
have to grant.
okay,
And to be clear, if I may, it didn't go until Thursday because we had to wait until we had the finance committee meeting.
And then board.
And, right, to miss the packet.
Right.
okay, got it. Just in terms of priorities, are there, what were, say, the next 2 or 3 things down on the list that didn't make the list? Because while we could certainly say, oh, we're concerned about X, if we're bumping something and moving it up, what's next in the batter's box to replace something if we felt something wasn't as strongly meritorious as
Sure.
the administration's recommendations? I understand this is your recommendation as how to proceed, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. As you know, that when we try and put together this list, we want to fund things that touch students first. And that's why you usually see all of those items up front. The next things down, we were looking to get their soundproofing systems for the middle school because there's several rooms that are horribly echoing, including the cafeteria. So we were hoping to fund probably in next fiscal year's budget, which Miles does say that he has the room to do so if that becomes a priority, but they're like panels for the walls to try and deafen some of the sound in the middle school, so that was next. Then after that came several requests for central office help, flooring, definitely some requests for the heating upgrades in the walls. As you know, we've had several pipes burst at the central office. It's an old building. So we can do it with next year's general fund, and that's fine, and we would be fine with that. But that's what came after this with central office requests.
Thank you.
Sure. Jay?
So first, I just want to repeat what Heather touched on is, in looking at this list, we want to make sure that it is student-centered and having the greatest student impact and priority that we have listed here. A couple of things that we did discuss at the Finance Subcommittee, which I want to bring up, was the textbooks. And I have seen multiple years where we thought we had textbooks covered and we go into next year and there are more textbooks that are necessary that we hear from staff or students who are being told because of the budget that they don't have the textbooks. So I just want to look back to the administration to have that conversation within each of the buildings and make sure that they're aware we have funds for textbooks and have that fit in here if necessary. The other item related to what Laura is saying, when we do have the report back from, was it Championship Turf? You said, okay. I would like to change this a little bit and number 25 have field mower slash field maintenance. So if anything comes back from that report that is a item that you feel, the administration feels we could fix with some of this money, you know, I know we already have the baseball field, but if we find that there are other fields that really need the repair and understand we could have the field mower last maybe one more year or see what we can do there with repairs, I think that would be a way that, you know, we can change this list but still include something which helps address those issues.
Laura?
Can you also please clarify why so many items are on here for security when we just got that huge supplemental appropriation for security upgrades?
So unfortunately, when the walkthroughs began and then the current walkthroughs now, and as the plan has been rolling out with all of the interested parties, we actually found out that we were going to be short about $100,000 in the reallocation of the AMS Science Lab funds and the Phase 1 capital funds in all of the items that we said that we were looking to accomplish as far as security goes. When you sat down with Miles and Bruce and whatnot, they decided that, you know what, we're going to go as deep as we possibly can in those items, but really these are the priorities. So they looked at the police priorities and they said we're going to accomplish these using the AMS reallocation of funds and the capital funds as it is. Unfortunately, because it was a $100,000 variance between installation and equipment, we had to remove the AMS interior security cameras from that list. Again, trying to accomplish what we said we were going to accomplish, it became a priority on the year-end fund list. That being said, another item that had to be removed was the traffic ballards for every building. That's why it ended up here. And then the security window film, that was going to be nice to have, but it ended up here as well because we really need to get the windows secured all the way around the buildings if possible. And then these two items, number 10 and 11, those were always slated to be a request item for year-end funds. Those are the interior blackout shades and exterior blackout shades, which were also part of the PD's recommendations for security within our buildings. That's why those are listed as number 10 and 11. Those were not part of the initial capital funds, if you will. Those were on the list of year-ends that we would like to fund.
May I add?
Of course.
And I think we discussed this at the Finance Committee meeting also, so I apologize if I'm repeating there. But one of the things that we were specific about with the Board of Finance and having a conversation about having the money allocated for this project was that we were not going to come back in this year and ask for additional funds there to do what the priorities were. And that if it became necessary, we would look to our own budget to allocate funds for the items that were on the priority list right now from the police department. And so as we're moving forward, and I think we should expect to see some variances even besides this, because we used costs that were approximations. We're not out to bid. There aren't RFPs for all of the items and so forth, because we needed to know it was going to get approved before we could continue moving forward on the project. And like anything else, as soon as we actually start going into walls and putting, you know, electrical wiring and so on, and we'll find out what that looks like. And so we just keep managing, staying within those priorities with not breaking the budget. And I think I would expect, honestly, that we will be back at the table talking about this costs more, this costs less. Some of that has already been the case. For example, remind me, Heather, one of the projects already we know the price has gone down on.
It's the camera cost
right? The individual camera cost, for example, is down as an entirety of the project.
If there's,
No, I was going to say, using the question.
Go ahead, you go first.
as I think everybody knows, I was somewhat cool on the concept of what I would call an excessive number of cameras. It would be interesting to see the final budget. I understand that we put a lot of stuff into your discretion, and from my perspective, I'm glad to see here that you have a number of items that I thought were reasonable and a better allocation of money. But let me just, so that you are not overly surprised when it happens next year. I will ask how much we've spent on cameras for interior cameras. And then at the end of the year, I will ask the number of incidents that we've used that for, and then I will divide it out. And I think you'll find out that it's going to cost over $50,000 for every time we use the cameras. I know that you've heard me. I know that my sentiments are not necessarily board sentiments, and I understand that there has been advice given by the police department. I am not entirely convinced that their advice on that particular topic was as well informed as it might be. For instance, they did not know what motion sensitive cameras were. So the mere fact you don't even know what it is, and we were talking at the time of 375 cameras, the only utility they're going to have is a rewind situation. So if we're going to do that, if that's the consensus of the board, that's fine. It's not my consensus. I think it is doing things that are going to be ornamental rather than functional. But for example, the bollards, good point. I raised the issue of film, I raised the issue of curtains for the windows and stuff like that, and that's dramatically cheaper on a per incident basis. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure you had that concern expressed so that you can tell me that I'm wrong, or tell me that you have it well in hand, which I'm sure you will not do the first and probably do the second.
Okay, I guess in advance of being asked those questions, since we're projecting forward,
Just letting you know that I'll ask them, so you won't be surprised.
No, and I appreciate that. So I think in advance of being asked those questions, I would also offer up ahead of time that we will do that, of course, to the best of our ability, but I think it's very difficult to know. It will be difficult for us to quantify every time that they're used. And I'm saying that as a former building administrator that knows that they're going to do things on the fly and not necessarily keep them in a log, even if I ask them to. So I'm not saying we won't ask them to, I'm just saying we may not be accurate in the numbers that we'll give back to you.
Understood, but I would suspect that the buildings won't have the complete ability to rewind and go through the films.
Correct.
So you will probably have a security log or a security protocol, so you'll know when the files are in fact accessed. And that's a very easy finite number. And unless people are running around, looking at pictures, for curiosity's sake, that number will be a fairly close approximation. So, particularly for outside cameras, I would imagine that a motion-sensitive camera would be appropriate, because when something moves in the parking lot, you might say, oh, well, something moved in the parking lot, we ought to look at that. Inside, probably not so much, depending upon the circumstances. But, you can always hook them in with the timing of the bells, and I like my gunshot locators much better. But I understand other people think that it's a good idea. I'm just letting you know in advance that I'm going to be asking a question designing to figure out the approximate cost. My guess is that depending on how many cameras you're putting in, you may be looking at $50,000 per incident, which I think is not a cost-effective way to spend.
Well, Houston, I think that the cameras will last longer than 1 year, so
Oh, no, I
over
understand
the
that.
course of that. And this conversation has come up many times, so I hope that we can move forward in a positive way on this because it's meant to be impactful to safety for the students. I
Okay.
don't know if anyone else other than Houston has a comment.
I have a comment.
Jeff, you had your hand up. Did you want to speak?
That made my comment. That's
Okay.
fine, thank you.
Jackie?
I wanted to say thank you. I think this is a great list. I really appreciate that we're getting as much bang for our collective buck, from both places. I'm really grateful for these security upgrades in particular. I obviously have feelings about your thoughts, but I respect that. This looks to me like we're doing the very best we can with the guidance that we've been given from the professionals who none of us are, so I'm really grateful for this budget. I appreciate how it was put together. And what's the timing on getting these things done? Like when you see something on a piece of paper like this, when do we actually think there's going to be ballards?
So if you approve this tonight, we'll set into motion the purchase orders or the RFPs, because some of these do fall above the bid threshold. And so all of these items are looking to be done during the summer or
Great.
received during the summer.
Great, thank you.
Before Laura, does anyone who hasn't spoken yet have any comments or questions? Okay, Laura.
So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can split this list, because I see this list more as a first draft. I apologize, I was not at the finance meeting because I was out of town, so this is the first time I'm seeing it. We spent a lot of money on furniture last year, and I have heard that much of the furniture that we had before was thrown in a dumpster, and I'm wondering why we're having to replace furniture so often. And this is over $100,000 of furniture, and I'm concerned that there's something else out there that isn't getting the attention because we just haven't seen it.
Okay, I'll ask. Heather gave a great explanation during the Finance Committee meeting, and so perhaps I preempted you from kind of marketing this to us a little bit better. So if there are pieces of this that you haven't been able to touch base on, I encourage you maybe start there and then fill in the gaps elsewhere if you're okay with doing that.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
I think you left off at the blackout shades.
Right,
Rather than
so
forecast.
as not to belabor the whole list, I'll try my best. The report card generator, which is number 12, this was a request that came out of the Information Technology Department, specifically our database coordinator. As you know, our report cards are sort of coupled together using PowerSchool, and PowerSchool can be a bit clunky, for lack of a better term. If you know our database coordinator, she is extremely invested in leveraging technology, and her request has been, could we please get a new piece of software that functions with PowerSchool so that the report cards are generated in a more consistent, easier to use manner. So that's that request out of information technology. Second, number 13, this is from the other side of information technology. This is to continue that process of shoring up our infrastructure here. So UPSs, 12 of them, that is for backup power, specifically in our head-end rooms and server rooms throughout the district. They're looking for 20 switches. And then finally, these GBICs, I had never heard of them before, but basically they assist with moving the fiber connections around. They're a fiber connector. That's the layman's terms I was given. So that came out of the other side of information technology. We talked about the baseball field, which is number 14. Number 15 has been something on my list for at least 2 years. This is the lockers at Roaring Brook. If you've been through Roaring Brook, it really does need a facelift. It is our best built building, but it is definitely one of our older buildings. So to start that idea of the facelift, we really would like to see those lockers either refurbished or replaced. And when we went out to get market research quotes, it turns out that we can actually buy new student lockers for about $5,000 more than refurbishing them. So that's what we would recommend to start that facelift on Roaring Brook. The bell system here at the high school, Dated is a kind term. It is completely manual. It also rests directly behind in the head end room here. And anytime a change is made on the schedule for the bell system, the assistant principal has to manually go in and change the bell system. It is very difficult to find parts for, and it's an ancient system. So this has been another item on that wish list for some time, and we would really like to see the high school get that update because it is crucial for operations here. Track repairs. I spoke at length regarding what this administration had kind of been balancing regarding this turf field project, right? Over the last couple of years, we were really nervous about putting a lot of money into our two fields here because we just weren't sure where we were going with the turf field. Well, at this point, because that project is kind of on hold and we have a lot of unsurety around it, we absolutely need to address some of the issues that are creeping up, and the track is one of them. It's starting to crack, it's starting to lift, so we need to address it. That's why it ended up on here. Furniture, which is numbers 18 to 23. Just so everyone knows, since I've been here, we really have not budgeted in the general fund for furniture because this is always where we request the furniture. Last year we developed a full-on replacement cycle because we had gone through and done all the classroom furniture over the last 3 years. Part of that replacement cycle is not just replacing furniture, but it's bringing in a better learning environment for our children based on the new standards. So if you look at numbers 18, this sit-to-stand desks, this is kind of the new model of creating a new classroom environment, right, for our younger grades. They're desks that literally drop down to sitting level and you can stand up. It apparently is something that is very, very desired by at least our 3 elementary school principals. I'm sure Kim could speak to these things being very widely used for multiple needs. The next thing, sort of to continue along that line of this workshop model, right, in our elementary schools, we're asking for these activity tables, which are like a half moon shape where the teacher sits and has a small group instruction. So again, this is moving how we're performing, right, the duties to our students. So it's a little bit different than the furniture that was replaced a few years back, which was student desks or rectangular tables at that elementary level. Again, number 21, so we've tried to break this down by building, just so everybody could follow along. AMS really isn't asking for too much because they received a ton of new furniture over the last couple of years. They do have at that top various student chairs and tables. Those are just replacements in several classes. It's mostly lab stools and just broken furniture. And then some main office furniture. They were asking for chairs and I believe a desk and not a whole lot there. AHS, similar situation, lab stools and a few tables here in this building. And then this, number 23, came out of TBS. That has been a request of his. This is for 2 years now. It couldn't make it last year, but this year, definitely. He needs 15 replacement tables and chairs for his cafeteria because he has not received any replacements at all at TBS. So this will be his replacement request for his cafeteria. And then number 24, those of you who have been involved with the discussions on crew over the last 3 years know that we've really tried to put forth the ability for us just to work together, and part of that has been this storage issue, right? So the crew team goes and they fundraise all this money for these beautiful racing boats, and then we have to store them because they shouldn't be subject to the elements all winter long. Storage is expensive, and it's proven to be difficult, right? The only place that's large enough is New Hartford Storage. They back up the crew boats, it goes in with RVs, they come out damaged. Getting them out is really difficult. So the question was, we worked with the town to figure out if we could get something in the back of the main office, right, to house these. It would be a 3-sided, almost an RV type storage building. I'm not sure what else to say, but with wind tolerance and things of that nature. So we could store them on property, and it really would pay for itself within like 2.5 years. And then finally, the field mower, we sort of touched upon. This is something that we did request, we really do need, and we would like your consideration.
Thank you.
I'll move the proposed list be approved.
Do I have an actual motion to read in. Is there any other discussion?
Is there room to, with flexibility, to change it if need be, based on some of the conversation tonight?
You could change the order.
I mean, with respect to the baseball field and some of the other things that we talked
At
about.
that point, I think you're chair's meeting.
Just asking if the report comes back, or is this it? Once we approve it, it's approved.
I don't know, Bridget, if you want to speak to that.
Sure. Barring that we have a motion on the floor to move it forward, just a little bit more explanation. I think, you know, just like Mr. Spivak mentioned about the mower, the conversation that was had there, we're looking that if this list is appropriate by the conversation we had at the Finance Committee meeting and tonight to move it forward. Like everything else in our world when it relates to finances, any one of these things may come back not necessarily exactly the dollar amount they were, or we may get that field report back and want to do some other work. And of course, we would come back and have another conversation with the board and let you know this is a change that we see coming and so forth. But I think that for the purposes of tonight and being able to move forward, we want to be able to get these things in motion sooner than later. And so the things that we can get out there to buy and to be fixed, we'd like to have the approval tonight so that we can move forward and do that. And then if there are other issues that come up as a result, we will come back to the table with that.
And is there any way to salvage any of that furniture so it doesn't all end up in a dumpster, or is it really all that bad that's being replaced?
I think, you know, I think part of that is us. A lot of it isn't being replaced, it's being added to. So that what we call flexible seating, the sit-to-stand desks and student tables and so forth, are to be used differently than the other desks. This doesn't necessarily mean there are just as many desks being taken out of service.
No, I was talking about the 15 replacement tables.
Oh, the replacement tables. I'll let you speak to that, Heather.
Yeah, so just so the board is aware, anytime we have equipment that we consider obsolete or is looking for disposal, I always work with Alex from the town. He comes over, he takes pictures, he determines the value of the item or items. Oftentimes it's a lot that he looks for, and then if he's going to move it forward in that public auction site, the town does reap the benefit of it. They take it off of our hands. They do dispose of some because it is in poor condition, but I haven't seen anything go right into the dumpster that was large quantities since I've been here. To be fair, there has been items that have gone in the dumpster, but I mean, they really needed to be in the dumpster. But the town definitely works with us on disposal equipment.
Thank you. You ready? So if I could have a motion to approve the listing of year-end encumbrances totaling $1,182,906.27.
I believe I so moved.
Okay, so Houston moves. Can I have a second, please?
One second.
And Bogdan seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moves unanimously. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the next new business item is discussion of approval of facility use expenditure. So on page 38, I don't know, Heather, if you'd like to speak to this.
I'm sorry for monopolizing your time. This has been another item that we've touched upon a few times at the Finance Committee level. The Board of Education operates an enterprise fund for use of facilities. The only revenue that is generated from that fund is when renters use our facilities. We rarely make any expenditures out of the fund, but some of those expenditures that you might remember are, we have an encumbrance right now for tennis court repairs, which will be occurring. We also assisted in some playground partnerships with PTOs from this fund. This fund also nicely funds the Veterans Day bus every year. It also supports any custodial salaries related to a rental. But year over year, the fund has been accruing quite a balance, and at this point, it's going to probably close out the year with over $100,000 in it. So the question is, what is a good use of this fund that would best suit all users? And if you look at the use of the buildings, the most used space, if you will, is the gymnasiums. Not necessarily at the high school, because the high school is constantly being used by our own programs, but at all the other buildings, that's what is used primarily, is the gymnasiums. So the question was, could we possibly put into place an annual expenditure for one gymnasium floor to be completely refinished a year by a schedule developed by the Director of Maintenance? That would be our recommendation for spending down some of this on an annual basis, and we would recommend starting with the main gym here at the high school.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? Jay?
So we discussed this at the Finance Subcommittee, and one of the comments that I had was, I am comfortable, for the reasons you stated, to spend it this year on the gymnasium, because most of our money that's coming to the facility use fund is from people using those gymnasiums, but I didn't want to hold us to doing it on an annual basis, so I feel like we should approve it for this year, and then if there are other priorities that come up, we want the flexibility to do that, but I'm comfortable, as you're recommending, for this year to do it.
Jeff?
So thank you for the explanation. My understanding of what you had said, though, is that the areas of use by the renters are typically the gymnasiums at the other buildings, not the high school. Yeah, I know. But yet we're going to use these funds for the high school, not those other gymnasiums that seem to need the attention, and that's where we're getting the renters. Why was the high school gymnasium chosen, not one of the others?
Not one of the others, absolutely. So when the Director of Operations looked at all of the areas, it turns out that that high school main gym actually hasn't been touched in a longer period of time than the rest of the gymnasiums here. So it was his recommendation that that was actually first on the maintenance schedule, and then from there we would move down. That's the only reason why.
Okay.
Heather, would this involve both gym floors in the high school or just the old gym?
Just one.
Just one of them. Laura?
So I also support what Jay said in that I'm comfortable with the recommendation for this year, but I believe that those monies, having watched them for 12 years roughly, go towards different projects that we've lived here, need to remain flexible. I don't think that they should be designated for one particular school or one particular use, but I would be comfortable this year having somebody make a motion to approve the use of at least part of them for that purpose.
All right, Ogden?
Just a quick question, so I understand it hasn't been done in the longest time, I suppose, but is there a safety concern? Was there anything cited that provides a rationale for investing the money?
No, he was concerned because we have a little bit of warping on that gym floor. Apparently we've had some miscellaneous roof leaks, which is, I hate to say it, it's normal in buildings like this with flat roofs. So we do have a little bit of warping. It just needs a little bit more attention.
Having the floor warped is a safety hazard.
A little bit.
Did I see another hand? Okay, so the motion before me is to have it be approved for the purposes of maintaining gym floors following an annual schedule. Are we wanting to amend this? Is this a consensus?
I think that's a reasonable, for what it's worth, recommendation.
And you actually don't have a motion. No one's made a motion.
Correct, but the one I had to offer was stated that way, so rather than say it this way, I'd rather say it the way we all want it.
Why don't you ask if someone would like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. Motion to approve an expenditure from the use of facilities enterprise account for the purpose of maintaining the high school gymnasium.
Or this year? Or annually?
I just removed all the annual parts of that.
Okay, I have a motion by Jay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Laura. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now we move on to communication from Board of Education members. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say?
I have something brief that I've been thinking about, really
Okay,
brief.
Jackie.
And I don't even know if this is the right, you guys can direct me if you think that this belongs in a different spot. But I think as my own children go through the athletic program here, I realize how much fundraising we're doing and how much is required of us all the time as parents of athletes to pay a lot. It's a lot, and it's constant. So I'm wondering if there might be ever a benefit for us to kind of do a look back and see what we're really budgeting for, what we're really fundraising for, what the real cost of this is. And I don't think we have to, I'm not advocating for any change in funding. I think it might behoove us to have a handle on what is really happening, what the true costs are for these programs. Because we do have a lot of multiple arms that are fundraising at different times for different items. Is there a way that all of those things, I mean, is that on our radar when we put the budget together? Like, okay, so I know the lacrosse team had to raise money to use indoor facilities when it was bad weather or something out in the winter, or turf fields for whatever reason in weather. Does that information get back to you so you can say, oh my gosh, it looks like maybe this is more expensive or less expensive than we thought, or I don't know if we have a way to do that, or if you want to think about kind of as a board learning more about the true costs of these programs.
So the Finance Committee has been very interested in this subject as well over the last, I'd say 2 years really, but this year we've had some better data. Some of the information is provided to me directly, but really it's funneled through the high school director of athletics. I can tell you that there has definitely been some shifting of funding, particularly when it comes to fees and renting things and whatnot into the general fund, whatever good that is for you. I think it would be a good discussion maybe to have to see if we can quantify what type of fundraising you're referring to, because maybe we don't know the full scope of it. So, fair enough.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jackie. Any other board members? All right, and so now we move back to communication from the public. Mr. Macy, have you changed your mind?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for staying with us. We will be moving into executive session. Do we want to take a recess prior to? Would you like, just for the sake of the tape, for me to read the executive session piece before? Okay, so prior to us moving into executive session, we will take a recess, but when we do move in, it will only include all board members and Dr. Carnamola to discuss issues concerning the employment terms of the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, the Director of Fiscal Affairs, Director of Operations, and Director of Safety and Security. But for our moments now, we can allow Eric to break down, and we will take a 5 to 10 minute recess.
Motion to adjourn?
We can't adjourn yet.